Project LUCID is here. The world surveillance state begins. Now there's no place left to hide. You know, that was the heading of you might say, the ad or the announcement in my Flashpoint newsletter about my new book, Project LUCID. Project LUCID is here. The world surveillance state begins. Now there's no place left to hide. But it struck me that we knew it all along, didn't we, as Christians? And not too long after that, somebody asked me about an ad we were going to put in a magazine. We've advertised the book in several different magazines, both Christian, and we go to some strange places, too, to advertise our magazines. In fact, we've got 3 New Age magazines that we're advertising Project LUCID in. Amen? Sure. Because many of the New Agers, they're very intelligent, they're very smart, you know, sort of like Christians, not quite. But they're interested in high tech. Many of them are on the internet. And many of them actually are even concerned about privacy matters and such. And when they see these amazing things taking place, I believe that Bible prophecy will reach out and grab them. And that probably is the meaning of Bible prophecy. Why else would 300 prophecies in the Old Testament point to Jesus Christ, first coming? And why would we have so many prophecies in the New Testament that point to Jesus' second coming? Is it to wow people? Well, I suppose so. It sure wowed me when I saw prophecy coming to pass in such a mighty way. And, of course, Jesus himself was perhaps the greatest prophet of all time. A lot of folks say, well, Texe, Mars, you're just a sensationalist. You're just an alarmist. And, you know, they're right. I am a sensationalist because these things really are sensational. And imagine the mark of the beast, the image of the beast, millions of people being slain around the world. All of this is prophesied to occur. And I'm telling you, news in advance, fantastic news, unbelievable, but it's coming to pass. And if you don't think that's sensational, well, what can I say about you? And of course, as far as being an alarmist, well, we're all supposed to be alarmists, watchmen on the wall, ringing the alarm bell as fast as we can, warning others of the approaching doom for those who don't know Jesus Christ. You know, the Bible says in Revelation 13 that all the world shall worship the beast, except those whose names are written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. What a mighty exception. So we want people to join that exceptional crowd. Amen? And that's why on the back of Project LUCID and in these new ads we're doing, at the top of it, it simply says, you know, the headline sort of get people's attention. It simply says, we knew it was coming. A lot of people say, well, I want to know, what does that mean? We knew what was coming. We knew it was coming. And folks, it's here now today. You know, for years I've been studying high-tech systems. I wrote a book called Megaforces a number of years. In fact, it was my first Christian book. I had written so many other books for Simon & Schuster and Prentice Hall and McGraw-Hill, but this was my first Christian book. And I really poured into it parallels with everything from laser weapons and atomic bombs, and I showed where these things were prophesied in the Bible. They really were. I also talked about implantable biochips. Now, this was about 9 years ago, and at that time, the research into biochips was so new, and many people thought for sure Texe Morris was, you know, crazy. Why, they'll never have some kind of a chip you plant into a body of an animal or a person. My good friend Terry Cook says he read that book, and that's what inspired him to look into the implantable biochip, reading my book, Megaforces. Well, we do that as Christians. We help each other. We inspire each other because we're inspired by God. Amen? And not too long ago, Terry sent me, because he knew I was interested in this subject, and God had laid it on my heart, he sent me an article from a magazine called The Narc Officer. Now, not many people know of this magazine. It goes out to some of the top executives and so forth of the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, even the CIA, Interpol over in the International Crime Fighting Organization in Europe, and many other law enforcement and intelligence groups around the world. In fact, I immediately got several copies of the magazine from the source, and here is that magazine, and it has in it the article that Terry Cook said, Tex, you just got to see this article. It puts together everything you and I have been studying for some years now. This is the September-October 1995 issue of The Narc Officer. Now, it shows very clearly right here underneath the title that this is the official publication of the International Narcotic Enforcement Officers Association. That's why they call it simply The Narc Officer. Terry referred me to an article inside, and that article is entitled, and this is the reason I found it very fascinating, LUCID and the Counterterrorism Act of 1995. Now, knowing what the government was doing, causing chaos and crises, and then immediately saying we need these new anti-terrorist bills, counter-terrorist bills, even a United Nations treaty, which would, of course, take away many of our freedoms and rights under the Constitution, I was very curious. You see, I'm sort of a National Enquirer type. I've been accused of that, too, because I have an inquiring mind. And I sort of suppose that many of you have an inquiring mind. And I wanted to know, what does that mean? LUCID. For example, it's an acronym, LUCID. And I read through the article, and it's very a wonderful article. It's very explanatory, and as you can see, very small print. It goes on for page after page, and it doesn't even explain what the acronym LUCID means. Well, that was beyond. I just couldn't take that. I mean, I had to know what LUCID meant, especially when I read this article and I realized the importance. This is absolutely incredible. Now, it's almost like something that, I don't know, out of a Stephen King or a Mickey Spillane novel. But then some people say that about the Bible. You know, reality can be much more weird than we can imagine. Right. It really can. Well, I noticed, first of all, that the article was presented by, it doesn't say written. I guess these guys are too highfalutin to write. It's presented by a man named Jean-Paul Crusoe, M.D., and Lucid System Designer. And it's also presented by Anthony Hilarious. He's a computer scientist, and he's a professor at Iona College in New York, and president of a corporation called Advanced Technologies Group, Inc., which by now I personally believe, I don't have a lot of documentation just yet, give me time, that it is a CI proprietary group. We shall see. Now, the interesting thing about this article is it called for an unbelievable global computer control system. In fact, it literally, I believe, means Lucifer's identification system, LUCID. Now, as it turned out, Dr. Crusoe and Dr. Hilarious denied that. But then, why shouldn't they deny it? Well, I found out a lot of things about Dr. Crusoe being of an inquiring mind, and Dr. Hilarious as well, as we begin to investigate this. And I wanted to know more about LUCID. Now, I went to my friends and all my sources, and I said, tell me what you can find out about LUCID. Well, they didn't know anything. I mean, it was just like no one had ever heard of this LUCID before. And, of course, we went to the computer, and we did all kind of research investigations. Nothing on LUCID at first. And then we began to get some data on it. Let me tell you a little bit about this system. What it is the linking together of all computer databases and databanks throughout the world into one. sort of a beast computer system. Now, the headquarters of the beast, I believe, is at the National Security Agency complex at Fort Meade, Maryland. What I have found out since then in my investigations, and all of this, of course, is in my book, Project Lucid, is that this gargantuan facility, I have a picture of the facility itself, the NSA, National Security Agency at Fort Meade, heavily guarded Army base there. And it is the second largest government building in the world. Only the Pentagon, they say, is larger. And I'm not sure of that. That's what they say, at least. Now, the NSA is a super secret agency. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But these are the folks who invented the supercomputer and organized, funded, and put together the World Wide Web, the Internet, working with corporate and other government agencies and educational organizations as well. The National Security Agency. We'll discuss that more in just a moment. Let me tell you what Dr. Crusoe, and I like that name. Sounds very mysterious. Dr. Jean-Paul Crusoe. Sort of like a Peter Sellers movie name, you know? When you say Dr. Crusoe, you think of a pink panther, you know, crawling around. Well, and the amazing thing is, I found that Dr. Crusoe is from France. Yeah. Dr. Jean-Paul Crusoe is a medical doctor and a computer scientist from France. He is on the staff of Interpol, the International Crime Fighting Organization. And, according to his resume and the documentation I have, he is the representative to the United Nations, UNESCO, the most wicked and devious of all UN agencies. He is the representative to the United Nations, representative of the International Narcotic Enforcement Officers Association. You might be asking yourself, what is a Frenchman, a medical doctor, and a computer scientist on the staff of Interpol in Paris, France, a representative to the United Nations, doing in New York City, working with the president of some corporation, being funded by the Defense Department, the National Security Agency, and the CIA, putting together this incredible global computer network? Isn't that strange? I mean, if you didn't believe in a New World Order, that alone would cause you to have pause, wouldn't it? It's really quite interesting. Now, I wanted to know what LUCID meant. I did notice what the article said and some other facts about it. It says LUCID is a, quote, universal information identification system. Let me repeat that. A universal information identification system. Now, I also found that in this magazine, there is a chart. And it's just a quick description of what LUCID is all about. Now, the interesting thing about this chart, it says LUCID system at the top, and at the bottom, it says a universal information identification system, parentheses, LUCID net. I noticed that the chart starts at the bottom with a nice, typical family. Because after all, these people believe in family values. Right? And there is these are like silhouettes, you know how they do in diagrams and charts. There's a mom and a dad and a little boy and a little girl. And underneath, in small letters, it says, Individuals Universal Biometrics Card. Now, we're going to look at what exactly that's all about in a moment. Now, by the way, there are arrows from the family. And in fact, right in the middle of the chart, it says LUCID net. The LUCID net. Now, the arrows not only connect the family, but connect the family with everything from the international criminal justice system. Did you know you were going to come under the international criminal justice system to the national justice system? And, of course, there's Capitol Hill, all of the regulators and agencies of government. And, by the way, I found in the article here, they say that this will go into place no later than the year 2000. Everyone will receive their Universal Biometrics Card. Let's just call it UBC. It'll connect you with this beast 666 human control system. That's what I call it, because the Bible said these things would take place. The Bible said a system of control would be set up so that no man may buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name or the number of the beast. Now, the interesting thing is this is a universal system. Well, what are we doing paying for it here in America? Why do we care if 5.5 billion people on this planet all have a universal biometrics ID card? And why they're linked in with the KGB in Russia, and the FBI, and the CIA, and Interpol, and Europol, and the Israeli Mossad, and the French intelligence agencies, and all of the banking systems throughout the world, and all of the educational organizations, and all of the hospitals, and the medical doctors. I could keep going. All of the databases throughout the world as one. Now, with the internet, you see, you not only have the giant supercomputers at the National Security Headquarters, and I'll talk about that in a moment, the National Identification Center that you probably didn't know exists, but does, and at the National Reconnaissance Office, which you probably didn't know exists, but does. But there are these giant computer banks connected to the NSA over in Australia, and in Great Britain, and in Brussels, Belgium, and in Paris, and out of Tokyo, and on and on. They've spent billions of dollars setting up what they call the critical information infrastructure. Critical information infrastructure. You'll be hearing about that in newspapers very, very soon. President Clinton just signed an executive order setting up a cyber counter-terrorist security group to come up with ways to protect the World Wide Web. He calls it, in his executive order, the critical information infrastructure. Well, the money for these people comes from, I found out, the Defense Department's budget, part of it, but it's the black budget, part of it, that goes to the National Security Agency. Evidently, we've been spending billions of dollars for a Star Wars system. Remember that? And an organization called the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, has gotten a lot of that money. And evidently they funneled some numbers of millions of dollars to Project LUCID. To Project LUCID, this control system. Now let's go back to the meaning of the acronym LUCID. Wanting to find out what it meant, I decided just to call up Dr. Hilaris. Why not go to the source? So we did. We tracked Dr. Hilaris down. And, he wouldn't talk to us. He wasn't very nice. No. He said he would not tell us what LUCID meant, but we could find out perhaps if we talked directly to Dr. Jean-Paul Crusoe. So we called up Dr. Jean-Paul Crusoe. Well, he wouldn't talk to us either, but his secretary, Miss Cressita Ramos, told us that she didn't know what LUCID meant. She doesn't, just because the whole organization, is working on this project, she really doesn't know what the letters mean. But she said I could talk to Dr. Bernardo Lamb, who is the chief research assistant with this Dr. Crusoe. Now, I'm leading you on this little investigative trail with me, so sort of follow with me, okay? If you don't mind, just for a few moments. Dr. Lamb did tell me some interesting things. He confirmed, of course, that Dr. Crusoe is with Interpol over in Europe. And I said, well, what's he doing here? Well, he's working on some projects. I also found out that he's working not only with American computer scientists and medical doctors, but with British in New York City. And not only Advanced Technologies Group is involved, but other corporations such as a Berkmeyer Software and others. And, of course, eventually, as we're going to see, Lucent Technologies, Microsoft, Oracle, and some really top-level corporations are involved in this because there's money. Imagine 5.5 billion people being given a computer chip smart ID card. Do you know how much money there is in that? And a control system with remote sensors watching these people and satellites in space, hidden video cameras, and all of the paraphernalia TVs that can watch you while you're watching them, chips in your phone where they can listen in on your conversations and what you're doing even in your bedroom while the phone's on the hook, and they don't have to go through the phone company. There's so much technology here, so much money, so much profiteering. This could be the biggest money-making project in the history of the world, and they all want a piece of it. Our friends in the business world. Well, he did tell me that Dr. Crusoe, who was not available at that time, was, and then he blurted out something that really is very unusual. I'd like your opinion of it. He said, Dr. Crusoe, Mr. Mars, is the father of the child. I wondered about that. Does that mean Lucid is only a child now? It's going to get bigger and bigger until it grows into some kind of a monstrous behemoth? Well, the Bible certainly talked about a behemoth in Job. I think it's Job chapter 40. Behemoth and Leviathan. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But the father of the child. Sort of ominous wording. But perhaps just accidental. But in any case, Dr. Lamb said he didn't know what lucid meant. And if he did know, he really couldn't tell me. I would have to talk personally to Dr. Crusoe. By this time, I'd become convinced, of course, that it was Lucifer's identification system. And I did mention that to Dr. Lamb, but he said, no. Well, finally, I did, to end the mystery, we did contact Dr. Crusoe on email. We communicated back, and at first he would not tell me what it meant. And then finally he came up with some words that he says it means. He said that lucid means logical, universal, computer, interactive data bank. Okay, that's what he says. And it's whether you want to believe him or not, we will see. Well, now the interesting thing about these universal biometrics card that you're all just dying to get and to have in your pocket, and by the way, this is going to be a sort of a halfway thing. Because eventually, you know, they're going to have to put a chip in your body to truly control you. So that the satellites overhead and their sensors will know where you're at any and all times. These global positioning satellites. You know, one of the experts, so-called, on Hillary Clinton's Medicare System Plan Committee, Dr. Mary Jane England, said, yes, we need for people to have a national ID card with a smart chip in it. But actually, she said, we need to go beyond that. We now have the technology to give every person in America a chip in their body. I quote in my book, Project Lucid, Ronald Kane. He's the vice president of Cubic Corporation. It is the largest maker in the world of smart ID cards. Last year, they manufactured some 60 million at Cubic. He said, quote, if we had our way, we would give every baby a chip in the ear in the maternity ward. Sort of interesting, isn't it? Not too long ago, Craig McCall, maybe some of you know of him if you read Forbes and Business Week and those kind of business journals. His corporation was bought up by AT&T for billions of dollars. He's one of the cellular phone giants, Craig McCall. Very visionary man. But he sort of shocked people at a press conference. They were asking Mr. McCall about the newest technology, and he said, well, we're at the point now where we're able to implant biochips in people's brains, and very soon we'll be using these. And the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, I think, said Mr. McCall, should go ahead and set aside frequencies on the spectrum and get ready so that when we send these messages directly to people's minds, their brains, we'll have the frequencies. FCC needs to get ahead of the power curve in planning. Wow. A chip. It can make you smart. Maybe you'll have like an encyclopedia in your mind, a walking high IQ. Or maybe they could put a chip and send message in your mind and make you love the Antichrist. I don't know. But we start off in Lucid with just this little innocent UBC. And it's going to replace every card. They say this is an all-source one card for everybody. And they do want to give it to you by the year 2000. Now, it's called the Universal Biometrics Card. You might say, what are the biometrics? Here's what they want to do. And all of this is explained in the NARC Officer and in my book, Project Lucid. First of all, they're going to set up centers across America. And just like you have your driver's license, you go in these centers and get this card issued. And of course, they're going to give men, women, children, and even babies in birthing centers and hospitals this card. Here's what because they'll want to make sure it's you. Because right now, all of the driver's license and everything, they're all, they have some kind of defects. They can be copied, counterfeited, etc. They're going to have some foolproof methods with the UBC. And it's going to be a boon to all of you. It's for your own good. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. First of all, it will have an iris scan of your eye. They will take a picture. They've already got the laser optical cameras ready. They've invented them with your taxpayer dollars, of course, naturally. And you just look into the camera, and it takes a picture of the iris of your eye. Everyone's iris is different. The lines, the contours, the ridges, etc. It's sort of like a fingerprint. It's unique. That will be digitized and go into the chip. The chip will contain initially around 2,000 pages, say Dr. Crusoe and Dr. Hilarious. Father of the child. Well, in addition to an iris scan, it will have the fingerprint and a foot picture. I didn't realize that. I guess everybody's foot is different. But they'll take a picture of the underside of your foot. My feet hurt. I guess everybody's feet hurt. So I don't know. They say that everybody's is different. But now, another thing that they will have is your DNA type. Your DNA type. We all know about that from the O.J. Simpson trial. And so they're going to require a blood sample of you. You'll have your blood type like O positive, etc., and your DNA. Now, another thing, by the way, is a facial picture. They'll take a picture of your face. That'll be digitized and go in the chip. Now, you'll have this card, and it'll stop terrorism. You go to the airport, and they'll have a device, and they put the card in, and it knows whether it's you or not, right? You'll put your fingerprint there, or else you'll look into their camera device, and it will see if that's you. But, of course, if you're on the computer because you're wanted, you're one of those people that refuse to take the mark. You're a suspected terrorist. You're a militia right-winger. You're a Christian fundamentalist. Who knows what's going to happen to you at that time. Now, some of you may be saying, oh, this is crazy. First of all, they don't even have this kind of technology. Well, they do too. Of course they do. It's all ready to go. For example, here's Popular Science, October 1994, page 49. Computers with a memory for faces. Here's a corporation, and they're mini corporations. They're vying with each other, competing for the huge contracts. Takes a picture of your face, is digitized, and goes into a card. All right? Here's another one. I like this one. This is from the New York Post, Monday, May 20th, 1996. Banks will soon see positive ID. E-Y-E-D. Shows a picture of an iris scan there. Now, this is an interesting article because it says that in 3 states on the East Coast, they recently did an experiment funded by you-know-who, working with the American Banking Association and so forth. And at the automatic teller machines, instead of PIN numbers, they simply had iris scans. And as the person walked up to the ATM, immediately the camera was able to tell who it was. And a voice would come out. Welcome to Nations Bank, Mrs. Jones. Welcome to First National Bank, Mr. Smith. It could recognize you as you walked up to it. They tested 1,995 people for the iris scan. Now there's a camera inside, and it's looking at you. 1,995 people. Only one was not recognized. Now let me tell you why. That individual was told to dirty up his eyeglasses. See, this can see even through your sunglasses, even through your eyeglasses, into your eye from a distance. So this person, smeared some junk on his eyeglasses, and it couldn't see who he was. And thus, that's how we're going to be able to get away from the beast, right? We all wear dirty eyeglasses in the last days. Only makes good sense. Now, here's an article that I think is very fascinating. This is from the Cedar Rapids Gazette, but it's the Knight Ridder newspapers out of Washington. It says DNAdatabanks.USA. I bet you didn't know that. I bet you thought it was just unique. Just guys like OJ. That's the only ones they wanted DNA, or a few of these criminals. Hey, they want your DNA. That's right. They want your DNA to be in a data bank. And they're already spending millions, maybe billions of dollars secretly to establish DNA data banks across America for your blood. They are blood suckers. And they want it. La chupacabra at work here. Well, let me read what this says. This is very fascinating. It says, thanks to the O.J. Simpson case, just about everyone knows a substance called DNA can identify criminal suspects with unusual accuracy. What most people don't know, I'm reading now right from the article, what most people don't know is that a nationwide system of DNA databanks is rapidly being built. It already contains blood samples from millions of Americans, whether or not they have been involved in a crime. Did you go for a physical recently? Did they take a blood sample? Maybe the laboratory sent your DNA over to the DNA data bank. Did you have a baby born in the hospital? Maybe they took a blood sample. Were you in the military? They're requiring all military people to give DNA samples. What for? Well, they have their reasons. Let me give you some reasons. Stop terrorism. Identify suspected terrorists or potential terrorists. But I began to think, back to this chart again. And I remembered, and by the way, that's what Dr. Crusoe and Dr. Hilaire said. This will be a wonderful tool to stop terrorists from traveling freely throughout the world. But I began to wonder, there is the mom and the dad and the little boy and the little girl. And they said this UBC and this system is even for little babies. And I couldn't remember reading in the Kansas City newspaper or the Austin American-Statesman anything recently about a little baby that escaped from a hospital maternity ward and committed some kind of a horrible terrorist act. But we're going to make sure we track these little babies, just in case there is a very precocious 6-month-old out there that wants to do another kind of federal bombing or something. Right? Well, you say Americans would never buy this system.
We already paid for it.
Yeah, you've already paid for it, and most people don't even know it. Well, let's just look at facts. I believe people will line up to get their card. I believe people will say, of course, this is a solution to this chaos, these horrible things that are occurring. Let me give you some examples. Just recently, I bet you've heard of some of these in the news. National data banks are needed. More controls. We need to develop a subculture of security, said one Senate investigator. I mean, Clinton says we need a national registry to track deadbeat dads. Well, hey, these guys don't pay child support. Deadbeats. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Let's have a national database. Let's track these scoundrels. Who could be against that? And then, of course, they're child molesters and sex offenders. They go from state to state and sometimes get away with it. Hey, let's have a national database. Who could be against that? In fact, I'm sort of for Bill Clinton's name being in the sexual offenders database. Gun control. Come on, guys. The Constitution is old-fashioned. And we need gun control. In fact, not only the Brady Bill, that's 5 days. No, we need a national identification center and instant check. That's what Bob Dole said. Instant check. You go to buy a gun at a gun shop or a rifle. Maybe you're a hunter, maybe not. Maybe you just need to protect yourself in your home, and you go to buy a gun, and they go to the computer, and they look up your name. Uh-oh, there's a little asterisk there. He visited a Christian bookstore. He bought A circle of intrigue just last week. We can't give you a gun. You're one of those, you've got an infection, a disease, Armageddon mentality. It's a new diagnosis, number 2300A by the American Psychiatric Association. You actually believe the government is out to get you. Somebody told me last night, I mentioned that a Gallup poll showed that 80% of Americans don't trust their own government.
Amen.
And a guy said, that poll's not accurate. I thought a liberal was in the crowd, you know. I said, why do you say that, sir? He said, because the other 20% lied. They were afraid of the government. And I thought about it. It's true. I mean, some poller calls you don't even know and calls you on the phone, says, do you trust the government? What are you going to say? Hey, maybe it's the FBI calling me. Oh, yeah, I trust him. Oh, yeah, I love him. You know, absolutely. I love writing that 1040 and sending off a check every April 15th. Your guys are great. Maybe the guy had a point. Well, think about that, though. Every time there's some kind of a serial killer or a mass murder, suddenly the cry goes up. I mean, I didn't quite understand it. The Oklahoma City bombing occurred, had nothing to do with guns, but suddenly they said, hey, let's have more gun control. Sort of interesting, isn't it? Well, just think about it. Another issue that we can solve if we have this gigantic computer database and everybody on it and give you ID cards. Immigration problem. Now, every good liberal in Washington is concerned about immigration. Aren't they? I mean, Senate Bill 999, sort of reversed to 666, but Senate Bill 999 was introduced this session by Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. She's a Republican. It was endorsed by Senators Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein of California, liberal Democrats. They all want to stop this Mexican invasion and all of these foreigners coming in. This is very curious to me. And by the way, Senate Bill 999 requires a national database and every American being issued a biometric ID card. That's right. Barbara Feinstein said we need that national database instantly, right now. And I thought back to 4 years ago. Now, I'm not a Pat Buchanan fan, but remember when he was the Republican convention saying we need to stop illegal immigration, we need to do something? And people like Feinstein and Boxer said, oh, what an intolerant bigot. He's trying to stop our wonderful Mexican friends coming over. Oh, what a terrible crud this guy is. We need a multicultural nation. But suddenly, 4 years later, they're saying, oh, yes, let's stick it to these illegal immigrants. Man, let's have everybody have an ID card with a smart chip in it. Absolutely. We're all for stopping illegal immigration. We're all against multiculturalism. Sure. Jobs. Robert Reich, Secretary of the Labor, says, you know, we need to help Americans get jobs. We need a national data bank. The state employment commissions are not doing a good enough job. We're going to have a national data bank. And everyone's job will go into the bank. Everyone's name and job. And when they change jobs or whatever, then we know that that job is available and we can plug everybody in. We need a national data bank. Now, Donna Shalala has a good idea. She asked Congress to give her $100 million. She's Secretary of Health, Human Services, and Lesbian Associations of America. Did I get that? No, I think I got her job title a little mixed up. I think that's her unofficial title. But Donna Shalala says that the government needs $100 million right away because we need a national data bank to put all the kids in it to make sure they get their vaccinations. You bad parents, moms? You're not getting your kids' vaccinations, and so Super Nanny will make sure you do at the government level. The Jewish ADL, which, you know, seems to hate both the Old Testament and New Testament alike, the Jewish ADL says that haters need to be tracked with a national database. Haters, yeah. It goes on and on. And, of course, Hillary wanted to give everybody a universal health care card with benefits that you could never lose. Nothing could be taken away from you. You see, my friends, there's 1,000 reasons why we need universal biometrics, ID cards, and why Project LUCID is the only way to go. Doesn't it sound so good? I even agree to some of these things myself, till you start to think a little bit about the final result of these things. Well, who's doing these things? Who is this National Security Agency? Well, again, inquiring minds want to know. And so I always start by going to the source. And so I called up, of course. I mean, I did have books. There's one book called The Puzzle Palace, written by Bamford. There's other books about the NSA. They're really not too good. I think they're really written by CIA agents. You know, they really are, you know. They act like they're going to give you a little bit of information, but they just lead you, you know. You're on some detour somewhere. I really think the government funds through CIA and FBI and such more book publications than the New York publishing houses do sometimes. In any case, I wanted to know about the NSA. Well, my congressman couldn't tell me, and my senators. They said, well, we do know that they get most of their money from the black budget. There is a black budget. And only a few members of Congress, the elite heads of the various intelligence oversight committees and such, they know what's in this black budget, okay? And the NSA is part of that. Well, I just simply said, okay, so you don't know how much money, how many tens of billions they blow of our money. But could you just tell me, please, could you tell me what is the statutory authority? Every government agency is created by law, right? Did you know they weren't created by a law? Now, these people spend about 20 times as much as the FBI or the CIA. And there's no law that even creates it. I found out that it was created in 1952 out of thin air by presidential order of Harry Truman, a 33rd degree Mason. Just created out of thin air in 1952. And ever since, they've been working for your welfare and my benefit somewhere in the world. During the Cold War, of course, it seemed good. But now there's no Cold War. I mean, they love us over there. They're flying around in space with us. Of course, did you notice they wouldn't let Shannon Lucid touch their controls? Sort of an insult to womanhood, you know. They didn't have any cooking stove up there. She couldn't cook. And they wouldn't let her touch the controls. And by the way, while we're talking about space, isn't it fascinating that the Russians get, half the publicity, but we get to pay the whole bill? You know? I just read that the NASA, National Space Agency, has decided that in this space platform that you're all spending billions of dollars for, that the commander of it does not necessarily have to be an American. So I guess the American astronauts will be up there working for, a Japanese or a Frenchman or whatever. Who knows? Somebody from, who knows? Nicaragua. Probably some drug overlord down there will be up in space as a commander of a platform. Next thing, who knows? And, of course, our troops now, under Presidential Decision Directive 95, can work for all these foreign commanders and everything. Isn't that amazing? Now the space platform, well, when they said potentially, it means there's going to be one, right? We're going to be up there working for the Ruskies or a Lithuanian or whatever. And I really don't mind if they paid the bills, right? Well, the National Security Agency, I wrote them and I called them. And they were very nice to me. And I told them I was researching them. I went, what is your name, sir? And your address? And it's so interesting. They didn't want to say much to me, but they did send me a brochure. Now, this is a copy of that brochure. Now, it's got a little line down the middle because, one of those brochures that opens up real fancy like a PR agency does. And it tells you a little bit about the National Security Agency, this super secret government agency that nobody will tell you anything about. No books, no nothing. But it's interesting. There's quite a bit in here for a Christian. In fact, I suspect you'll glean a little bit of information when I read something to you. You see, I also wanted to know what the symbol meant. I'm a big one on symbols and logos. They have meaning, folks. They really do. The occult world is ridden with this esoteric meaning of symbols, numbers, colors, the whole thing. Well, I noticed it was the eagle. Well, we know the great American eagle, symbol of authority and power. All right, it's a government agency. It's not lawful, but that's okay. It's still a government agency. But I noticed there was a key in its talons or its claws, a key. I thought, what could this key be? What does it turn? Now, I know in Revelation it says that Jesus Christ openeth the door that no man can shut, and shuts the door that no man can open. That's happened in my ministry. In fact, that's really one of my favorite verses. God can open doors for you. Do you know that? Amen? Well, these people have a key too. What doors are they opening? I wanted to know. I have an inquiring mind. And so I read here. They actually tell you about their insignia or their symbol. Here's what they say, for example. They do talk about the various colors and all. They say it clutches a silver key, the eagle, which is, of course, they confirm, is a symbol of power and authority. So what is the key? It says here that the key, I'm going to read right out, the key in the eagle's talons, at its claws, representing the key to security, evolves from the emblem of St. Peter the Apostle and his power to loose and to bind. Wow. A government agency has the power to loose and to bind? Now, I went to my Bible in there. I read it in Matthew. It says that Peter, Jesus says, you're given the authority to loose and to bind things on heaven and in earth. Well, NSA, satellites in space, all over the world, communication systems, cryptology, secret coding, and so forth. They have the capability now to wiretap hundreds and hundreds of thousands of telephones simultaneously. They're watching us at all times. But I thought about that. The power to loose and to bind seems a little bit illegal. I mean, don't they talk about separation of church and state? And now we have a government agency with the power, St. Peter's key, to loose and to bind on heaven and in earth. Where is Madeleine Murray O'Hara when we need her so much? Well, not too long ago, a congressman named Neil Smith, he's a Democrat, but at this time that he put out this constituents newsletter, October 1993, he was chairman of the Subcommittee on Appropriations, which is really one of the most powerful committees of the Congress. And he put out this newsletter to his constituents, and he said something that I think he shouldn't have said, because now his office won't talk about it. But I got this from a friend, a wonderful Christian source, who said, Texe, check it out. It was very interesting. He's talking about crime and gun control, that he is much in favor of, handgun control. And let me read to you what he said here. Now, this guy has the money bags of Congress, right? And he said something here that I had never read anywhere. I mean, I read pretty avidly. I hadn't seen it in Newsweek or Time or anywhere. He says the Subcommittee on Appropriations, which I chair, has been actively pursuing an effective solution to the problem as far as buying handguns. But the program we are to implement will take more time. The solution to screening people is to have a national center computerized so that local law enforcement offices can instantly access information from all states. In other words, all states would supply that information to the national center, and the national center will have a positive identification system which will identify any applicant for a handgun purchase. And then the next paragraph begins, and listen to this. Now, that's what they're trying to do, right? Oh, yes, we need instant handgun, but that hasn't been approved yet, has it? I mean, that's just what some of them want to do. We don't have these things. We don't have these tools. No money has been spent on this, or has it? Here's what Congressman Smith says in the very next paragraph. Quote, we have invested $392 million so far in such a center, about a 4-hour drive from Washington, D.C., the National Identification Center. Wow. They've already spent $392 million, and they don't even have any authority to do it yet. They've got it set up, all the computers, the huge building structure, everything ready to go. And then some crisis occurs that makes everybody want a law passed right away, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. But they've already spent the money. It's ready to go. And the instant Congress passes the law, it's already there. And if Congress doesn't pass a law, there's something called presidential executive orders, because it's so needed. And everybody would agree. Well, that's the National Identification Center. Let's talk about something called the National Reconnaissance Office. I'm just trying to indicate to you that what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is a Gestapo state being created and invented all around us without our knowledge. A Gestapo state. Things going on we don't know. The CIA bringing in dope from South America and using the Bloods and the Crips gangs in the inner cities to make millions of dollars so they can send arms. And folks, they say, oh, well, now that the Contra deal is over, that's not happening anymore. Hey, come on. You remember the CIA agent Ames? They caught him for giving secrets to the Russians. I really believe that guy, the sources I have say that he was involved in pulling a little bit of money for himself. They were having Russian deals. The CIA is using the Russians now to bring in dope in their aircraft. And they bring back billions of dollars, American notes flying out of New York City each and every day, and they bring in dope into America. And Ames was getting a little cut of it. And you know, they don't like a guy getting a little cut on the side. They want it to all go through the CIA headquarters organization. And so Ames had to bite the bullet as an example to others, of course. And if Ames shoots his mouth off, he may not last long in prison. Well, in Project LUCID, I have a list, of organizations. Now, we've all heard of government organizations such as the IRS. We've heard about the Drug Enforcement Agency, the FBI. And of course, over the years, these agencies, many of them have done many good things, and we want to applaud. And I'm not here to tell you that every agent is bad or is a rogue. I don't believe that. But I think a culture has grown up in those agencies. And in the words of my good friend, Officer Jack McLam, Phoenix Police Department, retired, he said, Texe, the scum has risen to the top. In these agencies. And what we once respected in these agencies, and should respect any American, something has gone awry. Something has gone wrong. Maybe it's symbolic of all of society, our schools, and so many other institutions. I'm afraid, as a former Air Force officer, I'm embarrassed to say that because of Clinton policies, it's beginning to affect the U.S. military, even the Air Force. But there's still some integrity left. Maybe at the higher levels, they're only promoting the officers that'll go along with homosexuality and the New World Order. But there's still some troops there that are trying to toe the line. And I've talked to some of them who've written me letters. I remember the man who wrote me, and he sent me a picture out of Air Force Manual, Air Force Regulation, 3510. He said, Texe, this is a disgrace. This is the new uniform we're going to have to start wearing. Because they don't want to push the United States, we're going to be merged into this global United Nations system, Army. Our new uniforms take off the U.S. insignia off our collars. He said, this is a disgrace. And, you know, the interesting thing is that almost caused a mutiny within the Air Force. 2 years ago, it was announced, you will be given this new uniform, and we'll have to take off the U.S. It's embarrassing for it to have U.S. It's so nationalistic, so patriotic, amen, the brother said. And, you know, they had to actually, Shalikashvili, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Mr. General McPeak of the Air Force had to countermand that order. There was so much dissension in the ranks. The little people, the sergeants and the lieutenants said, no, we're not going to do it. Here are some of the names of organizations. I believe this is a Gestapo police state. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I believe this. Listen to some of these. You've never even heard of these. I didn't either until I began to investigate. The National Reconnaissance Office. I'll be talking about that in a moment. The National Law Enforcement Telecommunications Systems Projects Agency. The National Crime Information Center. FEMA, of course, Federal Emergency Management Agency. There's the Interstate Identification Index, III, whatever that is. There's the Office of Special Investigations, OSI. There's the Man and Biosphere Program, MAB. There's the National Strategy Information Center. There's the FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. There's the Counter-Terrorist Center, CTC. There's the Defense Information Systems Agency, or DISA. There's the Defense Intelligence Agency. There's the National Identification Center. We talked about that. Defense Message Agency. It goes on and on. Agency after agency. What do they do? Here's one. The Law Enforcement Satellite System. Did some checking on that. It was quite interesting what I found out. You see, they want to give law enforcement the ability to access information coming from all of the satellites that are watching us. And so they're developing this system. It's going to be connected with Project LUCID, the LUCID Net, and you. But the National Reconnaissance Office is a very interesting one. These are the people that get all the data sent to them from the computers on board the satellites overhead. These satellites, by the way, now have systems that can see not just on Earth. It can know whether you're a man or a woman and what pretty well identify you. Not with exactitude, but pretty close. And now they can see 13 feet under the earth. So, you can't even go in a cave, I assume, but they can find you. And, of course, when you get that chip, or when they track your automobile, at the factory, a chip goes in it, and then they're able to track you. By the way, now they're going to be making them very soon where they can turn off your motor. You can't start it up again. You try to get away, your motor doesn't work. And they have the smart guns. The government just paid for all the money to develop the smart gun. They're going to try to take away all the other guns. The smart gun has a chip in it. And only the owner can use it. They've got maybe a chip inside their body or on a ring or something, and only that person can fire the gun. Sounds good. Because you don't want your gun to be left at home, and the kid get the gun out and have an accident. Sounds good. To just have a chip in the gun and only you can use it. The problem is they send a message from a remote site into your chip and it says, don't fire. Wow, you're disarmed. And they're going to do that. For your own good, of course. Now, here's the Austin American-Statesman, but it's from the New York Times originally. It says, and this is sort of interesting, it's about the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office. This is just really rich. Espionage agency lost track of billions. This is dated January 30th, 1996. It says, top secret office hid money in several classified rainy day accounts, officials say. The National Reconnaissance Office, the secret agency that builds spy satellites, lost track of more than $2 million in classified money last year. It appears that this money, over $2 billion, was part of their slush fund. I mean, $2 billion, but it wasn't all of their budget. It was just a little bit put aside for rainy days, a slush fund. And then they lost track of it. Now, let me tell you how this money was found. You see, Clinton wanted to send troops to Bosnia. Congress didn't quite want to fund it all. He had to find money somewhere in the defense budget. And you know what? They found billions just sitting around in a slush fund at the National Reconnaissance Office. They didn't know they had it. And now, thank the Lord, they could send those troops to Bosnia. Isn't it astonishing? It is. It's amazing. What are their ultimate plans? Here's an interesting article from the Arizona Republic. There's a guy, I'm not accusing him, he probably has good intentions. Eye in sky to track kids, a teen horror. Hey, I like that as a parent, as a granddad. Let's track those kids with satellites, eyes in the sky. You can't get away, teenagers. Well, it says here, that Jack Dunlap envisions his eye in the sky as a way to rescue snatched children, but it sounds like a teenage nightmare. Well, it goes on to talk about the capability does exist to give kids a chip and then, passive transponder, and then to know where they're at all times. Sort of interesting, isn't it? What's going on? Well, some people say, well, Tex, okay, I realize that technology can be used for evil. But is technology in itself inherently evil? Well, of course not. There are a lot of good purposes. We just see this microphone. You can hear me a little bit better, I hope. I hope it does some good. I hope you get some blessing out of what we're talking about. But still, the devil can use these things for bad, for evil. Let me tell you a little bit about some projects that seem sort of strange in the computer world. And I want you to be the judge. I don't want to say that any of these men or any of these projects are intentionally of the devil. Maybe their designers didn't intentionally design them this way. Maybe it just happened. And sometimes that's really true. It really is. Now, there is the truth that many of the greatest scientists in the world are involved in occultism. They really are. I know for a fact that there are now top secret government projects involved in trying to open up what they call the Stargate, to literally seek to communicate with other intelligences in other realms. They're spending your taxpayer dollars on those projects. And it's all involved with UFO aliens and all of this stuff and trying to contact these people or these beings. And I believe that they are contacting them. And these men are so stupid that they really believe there are these other intelligences when they open up this key, the Stargate. They simply don't know that these other intelligences are devils. They are communicating with devils. That's what they're doing. When you study high tech, you realize that some of the greatest inventors in the world were occultists. I'll give you an example. A man that you have to admire for all his many inventions, Thomas Alva Edison. But he was involved in occultism. In fact, he was a member of the Theosophy Society. Helena Blavatsky's group believed in reincarnation. When he died, they say that his last invention, he was trying to invent a machine that could communicate with spirits, with the spirit world. I guess he had never heard of the Ouija board, right? Nikola Tesla is one of the world's greatest scientists who ever lived. If it were not for Tesla, we really wouldn't have the lighting that we have now. Although Edison is given credit, for the first light bulb and all that. Tesla developed the generators and all of that, so we have the big power plants and so forth. Fantastic inventions. In fact, when he died, he lived alone in a grimy little hotel room. Government agents swooped upon the place and took away the safe where he had all his secret plans. Nobody even knows what's in there. He said he could create a weapon using just the electrical waves in the air that a nation could literally conquer the whole world with, and he had the plans for it. I believe he was given his plans by the devil and his agents. You see, the devil is very intelligent. I mean, he's lived for thousands and thousands of years, and he knows technology too. And sometimes, and I'm not saying I think they're Christian scientists too, praise God for them. But still, there are some of these men. Tesla, for example. Here was a brilliant man, but each day he would go to a city park across from his hotel. The poor fellow, you have to feel sorry for him. And there he would seek to communicate with a pigeon. He believed the pigeon was the reincarnation of a soulmate, a woman that he loved in the past life. How sad. He lived alone, had no friends, died penniless. After creating inventions worth billions, people such as George Westinghouse took advantage of him. The Westinghouse Electric and so forth, and made him just sign over these inventions for almost peanuts. But Tesla was mixed up, you see. And I really believe he said that in his inventions, he didn't work step by step. But suddenly, the whole thing came to him at once. Everything. And then he would sit down and write it all out. But it was all in his head. a picture appeared. Thing very interesting. Did you know that it was Stephen Jobs and Steve Wozniak of Apple Computer who gave us the first personal computer, right? And they founded Apple Computer Company. Have you ever wondered why their symbol is the apple with a bite out of it? Any analogies there in Bible? Did you know, too, that Stephen Jobs is a New Ager? And I have pictures of him meditating in the Hindu lotus-legged, pose and so forth in his home. I wonder if it was by accident that the first Apple computer that went on sale, sold for, they put the retail price of $666. The first Apple computer. Quite fascinating. Well, let me tell you about an organization, a company that is going to be very much involved in implementing Project LUCID. It's a company called LUCID Technologies. Now, I must tell you, I do not know the executives of LUCID. These may be very fine men. I do not accuse them intentionally of any devil worship or anything else. And I don't want to start rumors to that effect. As a matter of fact, I want you to understand that occultism may be not by design, but by stupidity, is rampant in America today at the corporate level. It really is. So I'm not trying to take one corporation out and say, this corporation is worse than all of these others. That's not true at all. I just want to give you an example, okay? And then you judge yourself the intent and the motivations of these people, because I do not know their hearts. I believe we should pray for them. But I'd like to tell you, or talk to you, about a company named LUCID Technologies. Now, AT&T recently, this last year, split off into 3 companies. And the old Bell Labs, which is one of the world's premier research and development groups, became LUCID. L-U-C-E-N-T. Now, the first thing was, one of the managers there, he's not real high level, but he's a manager, wrote me and contacted me and sent me some information about their new logo and about LUCID. He says, Tex, I'm convinced that something terrible has happened in our company. And that LUCID means L-U-C-E-N-T, or short for Lucifer's Enterprise. Well, we know that he's a kook, right? I mean, anybody who sees something like that, and LUCID has to be a kook. However, I did recall getting this article in USA Today, February 6, 1999, entitled, AT&T Names the Baby LUCID. It says that the word LUCID was chosen because AT&T hopes the name and logo, a red circle, will, quote, illuminate awareness. They want to illuminate awareness. It's sort of an interesting type of wording there. This is the European newspaper, sort of the equivalent of USA Today. But this same ad has been in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, and so forth. You can just see the logo there. It's a round, rough-edged circle, a fiery circle. That's their new logo. Now, folks, I've seen this many times before in all of my years of research into the occult. I wondered why they chose this. Maybe it was just by accident, inadvertent, I don't know. The fiery red circle, the ring, the fiery red ring. I remembered an old tune by old Johnny Cash. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burned, 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 the ring of fire. I think he was talking about hell. What do you think? Of course, he was talking about hell. Well, sure. I mean, that would hurt their public relations to have a logo or a symbol that resembles something like hell, wouldn't it? But then on the other hand, Generation Xers, maybe they're the ones that did this. You know, Generation Xers, the new generation? They like things that are cool. Maybe that's all it is. Well, I had seen this symbol before, and let me give you some samples of places that I had seen it. By the way, just last night a gentleman brought me this. This seems to be sort of that same circle. Now, this was red, but, you know, I I have one of those cheap copiers that doesn't do color, so just use your imagination. By the way, before we talk about this, let me tell you what a guy gave me last night. He works at LUCID Technology. He says, Texe, you are right. And he says, but they're pushing this logo everywhere. He said, here's something. They just gave out to us, and they say this is like a sunscreen for your car. He said, you take it out of the thing here and just undo it like that, and, it comes out. And they're giving these to employees and say, hey, put this in your car. Let everybody know about LUCID and our new logo. And there it is. Okay. And here this is, of course. The gentleman gave this to me last night. And he said, Texe, read this. See what this says. Well, what it says is, this is the symbol of Zen, the Enso. It's believed to represent oneness and nirvana. Reproduced from the original scroll, the graceful Enso symbol was painted by Mugaku Bunkai in the 1800s. He served as head abbot of the Maisanji Zen Temple in Kyoto. Has something to do with Zen Buddhism? Oh, no. Not LUCID Technologies of AT&T. But then I had found this in Gnosis magazine, an occult magazine dated spring 96. And there seems to be a circle very much like that. And this was in red, too. And then I remembered this book that I had in my research library entitled The Tao, T-A-O, Tao of Leadership. Leadership Strategies for a New Age. And that was red, too, on the cover. And by the way, this is published by Bantam's New Age Book Division. And then, of course, this symbol. The serpent biting its own tail. Also a circle. Satan's boast. He'll reign and rule forever. Never-ending cycle or circle. By the way, they have a TV series, I guess now they're going to have called Millennium. And now you know what that symbol stands for among Satan worshipers and the occult. Well, now, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I do have an inquiring mind, as you know. And just about that time, I received a press release from LUCID, and they bragged about their newest software innovation. They say this is the greatest software invention or innovation ever in history. And they have the scientists to pull that off. They have prize winners. You'd be amazed at what they've got, scholars. It's a new software that can link all the computers together. And the software is called, they've given it a name called Inferno. Inferno. In my Flashpoint newsletter, October, you can call our office and get this issue if we don't have it back there on the table. I have a picture of the press release in Inferno, and you can see it sort of rough-edged, and there's sulfurous, boiling smoke coming out of the name Inferno. What corporation would name its new software innovation Inferno? And then I read the press release, and it said that, every software package has what they call architecture or communications protocols, how it's put together and how it works. And by the way, this is explained in my book, Project Lucid. Now, interestingly enough, this press release said that this new Inferno software operating system has communications protocols and architecture called Limbo and Styx, S-T-Y-X. Now, limbo is a word sort of like purgatory, a compartment of hell. Styx, in the pagan mythologies, that's the river that takes you on a boat over to hell. So I'm thinking now we have Lucid, which some people say, but I'm not saying it, is Lucifer's enterprise, that has the fiery red circle or ring that some people say is hellish, but I wouldn't say for sure. And then they have the new software called Inferno, which some would say means hell. And as a matter of fact, in their press release, they quote Dante's Inferno at Lucid. And now we have their communications protocols named Limbo and Styx. But of course, I would not jump to conclusions, and I still don't, even though somebody sent me this news weekly. This is Crane's. This is the cover of Crane's New York Business Journal, just recently. Now, Crain's is one of the most reputable New York business journals. And there's this little item here. This person said, Texe, you'll find this of interest. And, of course, I did. It says that LUCID is looking for space, and they found a new building in New York City for their offices. And the new address is 666 Fifth Avenue. But I'm sure it's all an accident. It's totally inadvertent. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Well, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. We only have a few minutes left. But I'd like to talk to you about yet another project of the corporate world. It's called ISO 9000. Here, by the way, is a booklet. They're training one particular corporation, and the employee sent me this and said, Texe, this is the booklet that tells us, and we went through all these training talking about ISO 9000. Now, you may not have heard about ISO 9000. How many of you have heard about ISO 9000? Hey, quite a few. Is it going big time in your corporation or your company? You know a little bit about it. It's quality control. It's for good. But what is it? Well, it began over in the European Economic Community, in Britain to be exact. And it just seems that the multinational corporations have set up some international standards organizations. You may not have heard of these. There are 4, in fact, in all. I list them in my book, Project LUCID. And you know, these guys just got together and decided that it would be good if every company in the world practiced quality control, had good management and so forth. And they decided that they would institute something called ISO 9000 certification. And no one would be able to sell their products unless they have it, beginning about 1999 or the year 2000. Already over in Europe this year, it's going official. You cannot sell to anyone in Europe unless your company that makes the product has ISO 9000. You say, oh, well, this has to do with the big boys, the Fords, the AT&Ts, the Hewlett-Packards. Everybody. Mom and pop, everybody. And then I remembered again, folks. No man may buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name or the number of the beast. I even wondered about 9,000. Now, there's actually several subcategories, 9,004, etc. But overall, it's just called ISO 9000. You know, the number 9 in the occult world is the ultimate occult number. Did you know that? I've studied occult numerology, and I can tell you that. Here's the way they do it. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals what? 18. And then they add those 2 digits, 1 plus 8. And what does that equal? 9. So concealed within the number 9 is the triple number of the beast. 9,000, ISO, International Standards Organization, 9,000. But good, it's linking your business to the world. But if you don't have this certification on your manufacturing facility, whether it's in the garage or it's a 1 million square foot manufacturing facility, you can't do business anymore very soon. Whether you make widgets or what, no deal. In fact, in my book, Project LUCID, I quote some top-level executives of American corporations. They say, we already are refusing to buy from suppliers unless they're ISO 9000 certified. And by the way, they send inspectors from this organization that loves your company, that wants to help you to make sure that you're qualified. And it costs approximately $100,000 just for the paperwork to be ISO 9000. And then they have annual audits, surveillance. And if you don't live up to standards, you could lose your ISO 9000 certification. Right, folks? That are into this, been studying it? Think about that. Control. I never thought that they would have a mark on the manufacturing facilities. I thought it was on the individual. These guys got everything covered, don't they? It's really, well, it's sort of incredible what's going on. ISO 9000. Here's a couple of articles, by the way. Just shows you. Here's an article. It says manufacturing companies support quality certification. They better support it. The big boys started it. Now the little guys got to jump on board or they're lost. They'll lose their company. They'll go bankrupt. across America, ISO 9000 certification. Well, what do all of these things mean? Does it mean that LUCID is worse than any other company? No, not really. And please don't spread the rumor that Texe says that LUCID is satanic. I'm not. But I would ask questions of LUCID. Why are these things this way? It's very, very strange and curious. And after all, we are Americans. This is a free country. We can ask questions, can't we? For a while, perhaps. But really, what about all of these things? We see then this Project LUCID, this international global computer control system. I call it the Beast 666 Universal Computer System. What does it mean for you and me? Well, of course it means, as one person said very succinctly, we can kiss our privacy goodbye. And you know, a lot of people, I have some libertarian friends, and this seems to be a big thing for them. That's what they're interested in. They don't want the government telling them what to do. They want the liberty to do whatever they want to. But I think as Christians, we go beyond that, don't we? You know, Christians are very long-suffering. We can put up with a lot of things as Christians. And Jesus said if they ask for, one piece of clothing, give them the other one, give them everything. Well, I do believe that we should be very long-suffering. But the thing that, my friends, we cannot be is ignorant. We cannot be ignorant of the devices of the devil. We see all of these things taking place before our eyes. And what we've got to do is warn others that the day of Jesus' return may be approaching very soon. Would you agree with me? This is the message. We're not out there to say buy somebody else's products because this company is satanic. In the last days, my friends, I don't believe any corporate level structure is going to be untainted. So that's not the answer. We're not out against any organization. We're not anti-government protesters. Christians will obey the Constitution. What we do is expose those people who are against the Constitution at a higher levels. And we're commanded to do that in the Bible. We really are. If this is a constitutional system, then we should expose those that violate the Constitution, because in a sense the Constitution is our sovereign. But let's go beyond government. Again, I want to tell you that the worst thing to do would be to be fearful. In the book of Revelation, there is a list of great sins. And these are the things the Bible says, these categories of people will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Did you know that the fearful leads the list? Had a good friend, David Benoit. Maybe some of you know David, a great man of God. He once said to me, Texe, what is the fear of God? I said, well, the fear of God is, it's the beginning of wisdom, the Bible says. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. He says, well, then what is the fear of the devil? And it struck me. Fear of the devil is the beginning of stupidity. Right? The opposite of wisdom. Because the devil is the opposite. And folks, it's only the beginning when you're fearful. No, we should not fear these things. But we need to know about them and to expose them, to reprove them. But most of all, remember, God has a plan. These things are only small things that are happening in the world. God's plan is going to be fulfilled. And I pray, quite seriously, that it will be fulfilled in our day, and we'll hear the trumpet sound. God bless each of you. Amen.